You're listening to the Create a Life That Is Beautiful podcast with your host, Leticia Ringe, and this is episode number 25.
We're out in the world and we're, in a bunch of corporate people or, something like that, and we share what we do, and it might feel, if we're not in our power, we might feel like we're less than, because our businesses, our work is based on the intuitive, the creative, the flow, the ease. But I think to be in deep respect and reverence and value of all of those beautiful feminine qualities means that in that situation, you feel just as worthy and just as in your power.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to the Create a Life That Is Beautiful podcast. This is episode number 25, and you're listening to Leticia Ringe, your host. This podcast is designed to inspire, empower, and support you on the journey of uncovering your truth and purpose in the world. So welcome to our final episode of season 1 of the Create a Life That Is Beautiful podcast. Today I am speaking with my dear friend and soul sister, Sammie Fleming, about her journey to doing the work she does today as a Beautiful You life coach, trainer, women's circle facilitator, and Reiki practitioner. We're talking all about the divine feminine, being in your power as a woman, sisterhood, working with your feminine cycle, and importantly, how you can work with it whether you are menstruating or not, the power of women's circles, community, and Sammie's tips for discovering purpose. This is a really beautiful conversation that's going to lift you all up. I absolutely adored speaking to Sammie on these subjects. We're so beautifully aligned in our work, and it was Sammie that finally gave me the sign I was searching for to honor my calling to work and support women with the divine feminine. So this was a really special conversation to have. Sammie was also one of my trainers in the Beautiful You Coaching Academy, and I attended one of her women's circles in Auckland earlier this year at the Beautiful You Inspiration Day. And I was absolutely blown away with how incredibly special and touching her circle was and the space that she held for all of us. And it was only a matter of days that the seed was planted then for Embrace Your Feminine Essence, which, if you've been listening, you will know is my 4-week online course that begins next week. So it's very special for me to be sharing this space with Sammie and with all of you on the podcast today. Be prepared. This episode is going to leave you feeling a whole lot more relaxed and relieved about your life. You'll walk away with a fresh perspective, one that is so deliciously soft and yet so powerful. And this is the magic of the divine feminine, when we honor this energy within all of us. If you love this episode and want to dive deeper into these topics, then please check out my online course, Embrace Your Feminine Essence. It's open for enrollment until this Sunday, the 1st of July. It was taught over 8 modules, 4 live group coaching calls, a private Facebook community where we can all connect, and 8 guided meditations, all taught over 4 weeks. And we explore the different aspects of the divine feminine and how we use that with our masculine energy to create a system and lifestyle that supports us to thrive rather than simply survive. So if you're someone who feels suppressed or frustrated, stressed or burned out, or you're simply ready for change, this is the perfect season to do it. It's Cancer season, which is all about celebration. We're connecting on an emotional level. It's all about creativity, the moon, birthing new projects. It's a great time to start new things. So why not come and join us? I've created this course for you, and you can find all the details over at leticiaringe.com/embrace your feminine essence. Make sure you sign up before this Sunday, the 1st of July. And if you're listening to this episode at a later date and thinking, gosh, I can't believe I missed this, then sign up for the wait list. And you can also consider, coaching with me or Sammie one-to-one. Finally, if you're someone interested in becoming a life coach, Sammy and I are both trained with the Beautiful You Coaching Academy, and Sammy is now a trainer there. I'm a certified coach with the Academy now, and I would be very happy to chat with you about my experience. I'm also now an affiliate with the Academy, so I will be offering you a special package when you sign up through me. I believe at the moment all intakes for 2018 are sold out, but 2019 dates will soon be released. So just send me a DM or an email if you want to chat. Okay. This is our last episode for the season because I am creating space for the course that I'm running, Embrace Your Feminine Essence, for all the beautiful people who are turning up to be a part of that and to connect on these gorgeous topics. So listen till the end of this episode to hear when I'll be back, and otherwise, thank you so much for listening. It's so wonderful to have you here with us. Okay, let's dive in to the episode. Hi, Sammy. Welcome to the Create a Life That is Beautiful podcast.
Hi, Beauty. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. I'm so excited to have you here. And to get us started, could you let our beautiful listeners know a little bit about who you are and what you're currently creating in the world today?
I'd love to. So, as you said, my name is Sammy. I am a life coach, and this always shifts and changes, but I'm a life coach and a women's circle and workshop facilitator. I do a bit of Reiki as well, and I have now, I work within my own business, which I love, seeing clients one-on-one online, and I spend a couple of days a week out at a beautiful holistic alternative wellness retreat out in Daylesford, which is, for those that don't know, it's like a little spa town outside of Melbourne. So I spend about 1 or 2 days a week out there seeing clients and running workshops and doing all sorts of gorgeous things underneath the trees, which is so lovely. And women's circles are such a big love of mine, women's circles and sacred circles. And when you ask, what am I creating right now? I feel like that's such a good question. It's giving me a moment to pause and actually feel into that. But my next step feels like sacred circles incorporating men and women. So, yeah. And that's actually the first time I've told anyone that. So it feels like now it's official. It's out in the world and I have to do it. So that feels like the next evolution, which is exciting.
That is so exciting. I just got goosebumps when you said that, incorporating men and women, the sacred circle, incorporating men and women. That is just so needed, I think, in our world today. Absolutely. And, because so many of the topics I know that you focus on is, very much about the feminine energy. And one thing that I'm always sort of drumming into everyone here on this podcast is how that feminine energy is available to men and women. It's not about gender. It's something that we both have access to. So I think, how beautiful that's obviously something that you'd be tapping into for both genders in your circles.
For sure. And I'm, totally with you on that. It's when we talk about the feminine, like we're just about to dive into today in a really deep way, we're talking about the energy. We're not talking about the gender. And I think it's a really important distinction to make here, because until you really know that, until you really understand that, you just, associate the feminine with the woman. But it's energy, absolutely, which we all have, of all genders.
Yep. Absolutely. And so how did you get to be doing the beautiful work that you do today?
I think it's Oprah, maybe, that says, my queen, that says you can look backwards and see the crumbs that led you here. That's me, like, wildly paraphrasing what she says. She's saying it in a much more articulate way, but that feels really true for me. So when I was a kid, I can see now that this work was always in me. So I I read like literally hundreds of books. I would read and read and read and read and read. And I was really into, as soon as I really could understand this kind of thing and discover it for myself, I started reading a lot of self-development and self-help. And I would spend, days after school at the crystal shop, and I was really into having affirmations all over my walls and interpreting dreams, and like it all makes sense to me now. Of course, at that point, I never thought I could turn it into an actual real life job. But it was, that love of the magic and the mystical and the self-development and the how can we live brighter lives felt like it was always in me. So I went to university and I studied communications, and while I was doing that degree, nothing was really pulling me that much. But it was a really amazing experience nonetheless, lots of good party times. And and then left uni and sort of floated for a while. And really quickly after leaving uni, actually, to Melbourne, which is where I live now. I grew up in New Zealand, so moved to Melbourne and floated and did all sorts of different jobs for a while. And it was around that point that I started feeling this really hardcore desire, this really intense pull to somehow talk to people about how they were feeling all the time. Like that was just it was just reverberating within me. Like, I just want to talk to people about how they're feeling. How can I do this? And at that point, I was, oh gosh, maybe like 9 years younger than I am now. And at that point, I felt too sensitive to get into counseling. I felt like I wasn't able to hold that space necessarily. I felt like I would be sort of thrown about by that kind of work. So, and I'd never heard of life coaching, in those early days. And I think it was through following some people on social media and reading blogs and, that kind of thing that I discovered that life coaching was a thing. And I remember landing on the Beautiful You website, which is the academy that I trained with, and feeling like those words were meant for me. Like I felt like, oh, there's a job for this. Like every single thing I'm called to do, there's a way to actually train in it. And so, in that moment, I knew that it was for me and my path. And from that moment, literally from that moment, until this moment, it's always been a sure thing. It's always been really like a really strong, deep knowing within me that this is my life's work. This is my soul's work. And I feel so blessed and so lucky to have found that so early on. And I'm also stoked and really excited that I get to keep learning and keep doing this for another, I hope 70 years. I mean, that's it's optimistic. But yeah, I feel like being in this industry, in this world, doing this work means that we get to keep learning and learning and learning and learning. And I love that so much. So yeah, I guess that has, there's all of these little crumbs that led me up until this point. And I know that there'll be evolution after this, but yeah, that's what's brought me here.
That's wonderful. I love that you talk about, bringing it back to what you enjoyed doing as a kid and seeing all the crumbs that you can now. I mean, it's difficult when you're there or as a teenager, you don't notice those sort of things. But when you, in hindsight, it just all seems so obvious, and it's really satisfying to be able to go back and draw those, to be able to create that, I guess, picture of yourself that was always there. It's not like I really love how people do talk about a coming home, in self-development, but also in when you are aligned with, your soul's work or your purpose. It really is a coming home. It's an embracing who you always were, before you forgot who you were potentially. And that's what I don't know, those words just really came to me as I heard your story. And I love that you also said that this work was always in me.
Yeah. And I love that you say that, because at the time I definitely didn't recognize it, because we just think it's normal, particularly when we're kids and we're teenagers. We just think that what we're experiencing is, of course, what we're experiencing. It just is the way it is. Not only did I not recognize or celebrate it, but I think the opposite was probably true. Like, I was, in some ways like the black sheep of my family. Everyone was super sporty and I wasn't. I just wanted to read all of the books and learn all of the things and, have all the crystals. And so it was something that I guess I wouldn't say I was embarrassed about it, but I definitely wasn't proud of it. Like, I wasn't like, oh, I found my thing. I was like, oh, what is this thing that I seem to be into?
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, even when you do sort of step into like, I'm going to study with Beautiful You as a life coach, I'm going to have a business as a life coach, there's still also that, okay, this decision feels so incredibly right for me. And then there's I got to tell everyone I know that this is what I'm doing with my life. And so it's that, you feel so at home with the work, but then it's coming out to the world in that work as well. That's like another piece of the puzzle.
Yes. And so actually part of what I do now as well is train new life coaches through Beautiful You. And that's a conversation that we so often have, because when I first put myself out into the world doing this work, that was a total fear for me. Like, what is everyone that knew me beforehand going to think? And that was much more of a fear than what is everyone that has not yet met me, like what do strangers think about me? I wasn't worried about that, but I was worried. I was worried about what people who knew the younger me or who knew the me before that would think. And I think that's a really common thing. I think it's something that I see come up for people that are stepping into all sorts of, different areas of work or of living or whatever it might look like. But I think the truth of it is that 99% of the time, everyone's just really happy for us, and everyone's just really excited by the fact that we're following what we love. And that's an inspiration, right? It is for me when I look around and I see people doing their thing. I'm super inspired by that. So as much as it was a fear, and thank God it's no longer, but it was a fear, and I know it's really present for people as they begin and put themselves and their hearts out into the world. I think it's really important to remember that, generally almost every single time everyone just wants you to be happy and wants the best for you.
Yes, absolutely. It's funny, this morning on Instagram, I posted this little quote about what trust means. And I had the caption that said, don't you hate it when you feel like people are judging everything you do and you say? And then I said, so why do we do that to ourselves then? And then I spoke about trust, trusting that people are there to support us, and trusting ourselves, the way that we're feeling and how important that is. But yeah, I think there's so much energy that we use assuming that the people around us aren't going to support us. And if we stopped wasting all of that energy doing that, just think about, how much even just mind power we would have back, how much energy we'd have back from not going through that. But it's definitely a common fear.
Yeah, and it's pretty wild when you think about it like that, like how much energy we're expending in that worried state, when we could, instead channel it into doing something creative or actually building what we're building.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I also really wanted to just point out, you mentioned the feeling of floating between university and sort of figuring out what your next step is. And I think that's the perfect way to describe that feeling of not really having the reins to your life, like not being in the driver's seat. You're sort of, life is passing you by. You're moving with it, but you don't feel like, you've really got the direction. And I think that for anyone who's listening who is wondering, how do I know when I'm feeling more aligned with, what my purpose or my soul's work might be, I think that feeling of floating or drifting is a really great way to tap into that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that floating phase can be really powerful if you allow yourself to explore within it. So it can be really easy to hate on the floating, for the floating to be really to be happening in your life, or for you to be in that floating space and just think, oh my God, like I'm so impatient. I really need to find my thing. And why am I here? I thought I would be somewhere else by now, which is, definitely what I thought and what I hear so many other people say, like, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't. I thought I'd have it all figured out by now. And that's a lot of pressure to put on ourselves, firstly. But also I think that blocks us from being open to the callings, being open to these little miracles that might show up in our days, maybe giving us hints or showing us what could be possible, or allowing us to explore without any pressure of finding the thing immediately. And let it be an exploration, like a really playful time.
Yes. Oh, that is such a great point, because it is, all the magic is in the journey. It's not about the destination. I always used to love in my year 12 high school English, they'd always talk about it's the journey that matters, not the destination. And we studied that for a whole year, and I just had it drummed into me. And it's so wonderful at, 10 years later, or 13 years later, I am still using this same phrase all the time. Because that's where all the learning is. Yeah, we think we just want to jump ahead to that end. And but that floating stage is that opportunity to receive the inspiration, which is really exciting and so just as important as getting to where we want to go.
Completely. And just one thing I'd like to mention here as well is that the floating phase will continue to show up in all sorts of different ways, right? Like even when and I'm doing all the air quotes, but like found our thing, like found our soul's work or our life's work, or whatever it might feel like, found our purpose, we're still going to have periods of being in limbo, or being in the unknown, or being in like the fear of, oh my God, what's next? I have no idea. And so I think that, being kind of comfortable in the float is important.
Absolutely. And actually, I was listening to a podcast just yesterday on the Create Playground with Kristen and Natalie, and they were talking about the subject of mastery. And I can't remember what the resource was, but they were talking about a book that they'd read about mastery, and they were talking about, the plateau. That period of plateau is like the most important thing to be able to withstand, because like true mastery is really being able to stick through the plateau periods and at it for, like 10 years or whatever. That's where all the magic is. It isn't on those, really intense high periods, because, they're not sustainable. It is when things aren't, it's been able to keep through this is kind of don't know where things are going, but I'm just still going to keep at it.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
so
it's
good.
Pretty powerful. So, Well, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about how you got to be doing the work that you do today. I would love to now dive into a subject that I know is very close to your heart, and that is all about what is feminine energy and the divine feminine. What does that mean to you? I'd love to hear your take on that.
I love this question. Okay, where do I start? I feel like I could talk for about 4 hours on this. Okay, 2 main points actually. The first one is, to me, the feminine energy and the divine feminine are the energies, the values, the traits, the characteristics, the states of being that have been thought of as less than for a long time, or not as important, or not as valuable, or not as not as maybe important. And I mean, when I talk about those energies, we're talking about like intuition and compassion and nurturing and like flow. That's the word I was looking for.
Yep.
Flow and ease and sisterhood and all of that, those kind of energies have not been celebrated for a long time. And we're in a really amazing time of life at the moment where that is being lifted really quickly. Like the importance and the power of the feminine energy is being seen and recognized at a really rapid rate. And I am so happy about that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I think, an interchangeable term that we can use when we talk about the feminine is yin, right? So a lot of us would have heard of the yin and the yang, the yin being like the softer, again, the intuitive, the being state rather than the doing, the resting rather than the achieving, the receiving rather than the being productive. And all of those energies are really, really, really imperative to all of us, because we are not supposed to be in a state of charging through and doing all the things and smashing it 100% of the time. It's not sustainable and it's not healthy, and it's not where any of us thrive to be in that, that yang state, so that masculine state, the opposite, the doing, the productivity, the achieving. And so the feminine energy for me is, of course, all of that beautiful softness. And when I say softness, one of my very favorite terms is there is so much strength in softness, because I believe that so much. And we've been taught to think the opposite. Like, we've been taught to believe that to be sensitive, to be intuitive, to be heart-led, to be gentle is to be weak. And I think that now the truth is really coming out, and that the truth is that it's the very opposite, all of those traits, all of those states of being, all of those innate qualities that we hold, and women tend to, and I don't want to really get too gender specific here, but it is, said, and anecdotally seems to be very true, that women hold these traits within them really strongly, naturally. And so seeing this revival of the reverence of these traits is a beautiful thing. And for me, the other sort of aspect of that question that you ask, what is the divine feminine? What is the feminine energy? For me, is embracing all of what it is to be a woman. And when I say that, I guess I'm sort of, and I know you and I are not going to talk too much, I don't think, about menstrual cycles today, but within, the menstrual cycle space, within a typical month, we experience all sorts of different archetypes and, women within us. And so to really embrace the divine feminine and the feminine energy is to embrace all of what it is to be a woman. So, throughout the course of a month, years, lifetimes, we can be really like cute and lovely and sweet and kind and, gentle and motherly and nurturing and wise as all things. And we can be ruthless and angry and wild and frustrated, and we can be really connected, and we can be so intuitive, and we can be, the ultimate receivers, and we can download all of the things from the universe. And so I think that the feminine energy is not just the lovely, soft, kind, sweet energy at all. It's also the wild, fiery, angry, passionate woman that is within all of us, or feminine energy that is within all of us. Yeah.
Absolutely. At the moment, one of my favorite books is Women Who Run with the Wolves. It is just, I mean, my mum had been trying to get me to read this book for years, actually years. And I picked it up years ago and it wasn't the right time. And now I mean, I'm still like going through it, but I just have so many notes throughout it all. It's so incredible, but that really taps into that more, that wild, and well, also she talks about all different aspects of it, but that wild nature that is within women is, it's not something that we really associate with, especially words like femininity and feminine. You know, it does tend to have that softer connotations. And actually I just aired a podcast episode the other week, and it was all about what the difference between masculine and feminine energy. And as I was doing that and I spoke about it in the episode, I realized just most of these words, you know, like even feminine or soft or ease, you know, how do you feel when you think about those words, and compared to things like action and hard and tough and productive, you know, those are words that have a real positive connotation to them, those masculine action compared with these feminine words. And so for me, because I always thought about, was I a natural feminine strength or masculine strength woman? And I believe that I'm a feminine strength woman, but like many women, I put on my, you know, masculine hard exterior to sort of survive in the world and to be accepted and all of that. So that was it. That was a forgetting and a sort of turning my back on a lot of these feminine qualities. And I think that is a position that a lot of people find themselves in. And then it's about allowing that, you know, feminine energy to come up and be accepted within you again and valued.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say that is a very common story.
Yeah.
Yeah. While also needing to, of course, embrace those masculine qualities too, because we need to get things done. And, you know, like for me, I am running a business, and that requires me to be in my masculine energy a lot of the time, because otherwise there will be no business.
That's right.
And it just, I think being aware of both of the energies and being really conscious of choosing to be in one or be in the other, and knowing that you actually have the power, the capacity, the ability to shift from one to the other is a really beautiful thing too, because then we can access both and use both of them and love both of them, and, you know, hold no resentment to being in our masculine because we know it serves us, and then know when we want to drop or soften into our feminine state.
Yes, this is such an important point, because it's that paradoxical thinking. You know, we can be both, or it's both at the same time and neither at the same time. It's not about having to choose between one or the other, which I like in Western thinking, you know, paradoxical thinking isn't something that's really understood as well as it is in maybe Eastern, in the East. And so it's really difficult for us to understand, because we feel like we do have to choose. It's always, you know, where it's about identity, I guess, and the ego being tied up in one over the other. We have to either be masculine or we're either feminine. And that's the beauty of it all. We're actually both.
Completely. And I saw within the, you know, the spiritual or the coaching world a few years ago now, a real dive into the divine feminine, like, you know, like a all-in approach. And now I see the pendulum swinging back to be sort of somewhere in the middle, because to be, you know, all in 100% of the time, just doesn't work, and we're not supposed to be doing that. And, you know, the fiery doing action sides of us are so needed and so great.
Yeah. And also one of my mentors, Jess Lively, she talks a lot about the difference between action and inspired action. And I think that's a really beautiful example of when you are using and drawing from both energies, because the masculine, we talk about the action that's getting stuff done. But if you've got that inspiration and those creative powers behind your action and your flow, you know, you're in your flow, or working with your flow when you're taking action, that level of the output is so much more easeful. You know, you still use a lot of energy, but you don't feel like you're using as much energy, and it's way more productive because your the outcome is just, you know, more innovative. And, you know, creativity is always amazing. We really do value creativity, I think, as a society, but potentially we don't all believe that we are creative. And that's another topic. But yeah, so it's that, I love that difference between inspired action and action.
Yeah, I love that. That's a game changer for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, beautiful. This is Leticia here. I hope you're enjoying this wonderful conversation with Sammy. It's so juicy, isn't it? Now, I want to stop for a moment and just pause this conversation to remind you about the offer to join the first live intake of Embrace Your Feminine Essence, my 4-week online course designed to reconnect you with your feminine energy and integrate that with your masculine. If that sounds like something that you'd love to create in your life, then please join us in Embrace Your Feminine Essence. You can sign up before the 1st of July, which is this Sunday, at leticiaringe.com/embrace your feminine essence. And so you also spoke about the other aspect about encompassing everything it means to be a woman, and you're talking about the menstrual cycle and the different, you know, life phases that we have as women. I think those archetypes, you know, being able to, this is also not having to choose one over the other. It's another example of being all of these at once and being able to accept that you are all of these women potentially at the same time, or potentially, you know, changing from day to day, from hour to hour, from week to week. It's undefined.
Completely. And I think really embracing all of that is so key. Rather than resist it. You know, if we feel frustrated about something, allow ourselves to feel that frustration and see what's there and see what needs to be looked at and all of that, and not just push it down or push it away and, you know, desire to get back to that really lovely, kind, sweet girl, because that's not us all of the time. Of course it's not.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you said, you know, you always love talking about how people were feeling. And so that's so like interesting that you do focus on feminine energy too, because, you know, it's all about feeling. And I think even within that, there's the good, what we think are good feelings and what we think are bad feelings. But, you know, that both of them are good because they let us know, you know, when things might need to change. They're also, you know, amazing sources to draw from for creativity. You know, if we think about musicians or a lot of art, a lot of that has been made from, you know, difficult emotions, and have created like really incredible, you know, masterpieces. So these emotions are all, you know, available to us, and I think looking at them through the lens of what's good and what's bad, we're kind of missing out on being able to, you know, really use them to our advantage. Do you feel something similar when it comes to feelings?
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to feelings, yes, I do. I think I'm all about feeling the feelings. Like, I'm all about feeling all the feelings.
Okay.
I think our emotions are great teachers, and I also think that we have attached a real story to feelings that we would associate with being negative. And if we were to strip back the stories of what we've told ourselves, so like, let's, you know, for example, talk about anger. If we strip back the story of anger being bad and anger being wrong and anger being a response to a bad thing, and instead, you know, allow it to just be the sensation for what it is, and allow ourselves to just listen in and ask what needs to be processed here, or allow it to be processed in whatever way. You know, there's all sorts of anger processing tools out there in the world. I think that's being in our power, and not shying away from the human experience, which is the entire emotional spectrum.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's really important what you said about experiencing the physical sensation of it. And I mean, that's a game changer in itself, just being able to sit there and, identify, well, how does it feel in my body? Because some of our emotions, I think we have a limited understanding of all the emotions that we might be feeling. And so sometimes, unless we're actually physically connecting to how it feels in our body, we might think that it's actually something else. And so that's been a real game changer for me, actually, being able to, okay, I'm having this feeling. Well, what are the physical sensations that I'm actually experiencing? And using that as the sort of starting point to then dive into, well, why and what do I need? How can I express this emotion? And then once you feel it and express it, it often passes a lot quicker. Well, definitely quicker than when we repress it, because it just sort of gets stuck there.
Of course, yeah, we need to allow ourselves to feel the feelings, process them, and allow them to actually come out, right? And so, I run sometimes like emotional understanding workshops, and in those we have, and you can just get these online, a like an emotional scale that has all of the main emotions that we feel, which can be really handy to have as a tool if you're wanting to deepen into understanding what certain feelings feel like in your body, because the difference between frustration and anger feel like we might intellectually think they are similar, and we feel them in our body and we realize how different they actually are. The stories we've attached to different feelings, and then how they're best processed ourselves. Yeah, knowing ourselves as we do.
Yes, and this is the difference between masculine and feminine, because the experience of this is different for each and every one of us, because it's subjective, not objective. And I think, this is why feminine energy is a lot harder to understand for people, because it has to be experienced, and it is different depending on what the experience is for you. So we might be talking about one thing and that might sound like something else, and so that's why it's just so much harder to grasp.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I'd love to talk about with the menstrual cycle, because I know you do a lot of work on the menstrual cycle, and we recently had Claire Baker on, who sort of explained the seasons to us, which I've heard you speak about, and it was so incredible. I'd love you to talk about, you also talk a lot, and I think this is so important, about no matter whether you're bleeding or not, menstruating or not, as a woman, you still have access to a feminine cycle, or you still have and experience a feminine cycle.
Yeah. So this is something I feel pretty fiery about.
Yay!
And the reason for that is, so I've had, multiple clients come to me and say, I'm really intrigued by that whole cycle thing, and I really wish I had that. Like, I really wish I experienced that. But for whatever reason, they're not currently experiencing the menstrual cycle, be it, like a procedure that they've had, or menopause, or, there's all sorts of different reasons. And some by choice and some not by choice. And it broke my heart every time to hear that they didn't feel they could identify with the very feminine thing of having a cycle, and there's so much magic in our menstrual cycles, right? But then there's also so much magic in just the feminine cycle as a whole. So I very strongly believe that every single woman experiences what it is to be a cyclic woman. And that, of course, looks different for all of us, and definitely something to explore if it's something new for you. But if you are not currently experiencing a menstrual cycle, a really great and easy way to start tracking your cycle, I suppose, to start really deepening into your understanding of your, magical cycle ways, is to track with the moon. So it's no coincidence that, the standard menstrual cycle is 28 days, and, it's the same as the lunar cycles. And we're really connected as women. Our bodies are so connected to the earth, the seasons, the moon, all of it. And if women don't experience the bleed, the full menstrual cycle, allowing themselves to track with the moon, the new moon as though it's the bleed, the full moon as though it's the ovulation, and start playing with it in that way, because there is, if you identify as a woman, it means that you experience what it is to have a cycle. And that is a really powerful force. So, I guess I just want to reiterate to anyone that's ever heard that they don't have a cycle, because the amount of times I've heard people that have been told that, people have told me that they've been told that they don't have a cycle, is wild. And so if you've ever been told that, know that that is totally not true. You are, connected to the moon, and your body is a magical, cycle-loving being.
Oh, it's just that's so important. I really, really love that's a message that I've gotten from you loud and clear. And I think it's so important for people to understand that, because as we were just talking about before, this cyclical, apart from the hormonal fluctuations, it is this being able to embrace the different, archetypal and also just even personality traits, within us, all existing at the same time. And working with the moon is just that really helped me as well, be able to really connect to my own cycle on a much deeper level. And also it's really beautiful to be able to experience that connection with the moon, because it's kind of just, before you start working with it, it's kind of just there, and you're like, hey, there's a moon. That's it. But you don't really understand, the different phases of the moon cycle and the energy, and and how it affects people, and how women, we often sync up with each other, and we can sync up with the moon once you start tracking it. It's so fascinating. It's wild.
It's wild. It's so fascinating. And I know I've said this word, a lot of times in the last few minutes, but there's actual magic in my eyes. And I ran a group coaching program all around the menstrual cycle. And as part of it, I did an interview with my now husband. And I asked him, all the questions about periods, but also I asked him, what is it like for you now to understand the ways of the cycle? And one of his main points, he was just in awe of the fact that we are so connected to everything around us. And the moon particularly, he was like, what is that magic? Because it is. And until we really connect to it, until we see how intertwined we are, and how we're just really these creatures roaming on the earth that are, really super connected to the moon above us and the earth around us. It's a crazy thing. It's an amazing thing.
Definitely. And it's also so helpful at helping a person turn to themselves rather than looking to what's happening around you, because you really have to feel it for yourself and to be able to understand and experience it for yourself. So it's a really great practice for sort of owning your own truth and your own, authenticity.
Absolutely. And part of, the wild feminine, which I know we touched on just briefly earlier, is being connected to the world around us. And, it's really easy now to live in our houses and just have the lights on and, not really feel connected to the moon, not even hardly see the moon.
Yeah.
But having that understanding of how, this beautiful Lady Luna in the sky affects us month by month by month is one really incredible way to start being more connected to the world around us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so how has understanding all of this about the, being a cyclic woman and about, the power in your menstrual cycle, how has this sort of added or, given you more ease and flow into your own life?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So, firstly, I'd say it's made me feel far less crazy. And by that, I mean, like, we've talked about how we shift through all of these different personality traits and archetypes and states of being throughout the course of a month or, again, years in life, our whole life. But before I understood that, I would really question myself. So, 1 week I would find something really easy, and 2 weeks later I'd find it a total struggle, like full-blown struggle city. And I didn't get it, and I would kind of I would just berate myself a little, going like, why? Like, what's with you today? I don't get it. I thought we loved this thing. I thought we found it really easy. And so not understanding meant that those challenges would come up quite a lot. And now understanding for me at certain times of my month what feels really easy or really easeful and what feels challenging or like a struggle at other times of the month is an actual game changer. I feel like it is a little easier for me to work with having my own business, and it is a slightly different thing, of course, when you work for someone and you're showing up to an office 5 days a week. But there's absolutely ways to honor the shifts, ebbs and flows and changes in your energy, for sure, either way. But it's allowed me to work to my strengths and to what is joyful and easeful depending on where I am in my month. And when I say that, it makes it sound like my entire month is just easeful and joyful and there's no struggle, and that is not true. Of course, like real life happens and I have to do things on days that are challenging for me, or something's due by a certain date or whatever it might look like, where I have to I guess like go against, if I was living fully, completely, 100% by my cycle, I have to sort of slightly go against my natural energies. But predominantly that is now the case. I feel like after years of tracking and getting to know and love my cycle, I have a real awareness around what works for me and what doesn't work for me at different times of the month. And that in itself allows for some real flow.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's the great thing, isn't it? Once you sort of become aware of what your tendencies are in the certain seasons or phases of your cycle, then you can sort of start to plan accordingly as well, leveraging each of those. I really love to use the example, like in summer, that's when I'm going to be doing, a lot of my video content or Facebook Lives, or I'll be, doing a lot more calls, just a lot more face-to-face sort of stuff. And in the winter, I'm going to strip back as much as possible, because even though I can do it, yeah, sure, you can do it. Absolutely. But it doesn't feel as good to do it. And it's, I think that's it's all about, being able to conserve your energy so that for the overall cycle, you're, operating as best as you can. So I think that's really interesting, rather than just shifting from focusing on what the day brings to you, just this day, but, the overall cycle, getting as much as possible from that requires that you have to respect your energy levels throughout the different phases.
Yes, and our cycles are set up as the most perfect system. Like, it blows my mind month after month after month. But essentially, we go through a life cycle every single month. And so when we're talking about ease and flow, whether we're creating a project, whether we're building our businesses, whether we're, whatever it might look like, we get to experience the winter. So the, intuitive downloading, receiving guidance, resting, restoring, really allowing our energy to be still. So then we can actually, have energy reserves later in the month. And then we get to go out into the world feeling like really bright-eyed and excited and put whatever guidance or, whatever inspiration that we've received out into the world. And then we get to bloom in our summer, and then we get to edit and be ruthless in our autumns, and around it goes. It's the perfect business system.
Yeah, it really is. And it encompasses the masculine and the feminine and the yin and the yang throughout it. It is magical.
It's magical. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And I think, because extroversion is so valued, especially I guess in the West and some places more than others, like America, more than the UK potentially. But so summer seems like such a fantastic, that's when you really get all your work done. But it's this valuing our feminine qualities, like the receiving, like the intuitive, like that you get during a winter where it's at its peak. We need to just shift our perspective about what we value, because that's still work. It's not just work, just showing up, if you're in a corporate world, showing up for meetings during your summer, and, that's not where all the work happens. A lot of people know that because, you still got to go and do the work. You got to get the ideas, you got to get the inspiration, you got to, and the editing part, that's a massive part of any project we do. So I think it's, just being able to really value, we're coming back to being able to value the feminine qualities and just really understand that there is this, I guess, collective influence on the way we perceive the feminine that's just sort of been carried on for centuries, and we're only sort of starting to now lift the layers on all of that, why we believe, softness is something that's not as good as hardness. And
Yeah. And that's a really good example of how the feminine energies are just as important and, equally valued within the cycle world, and how unsustainable it would be to be just in our spring and our summer at all times, just like full-blown creating, blooming out in the world, like showing the world everything, without any space to go within and get those ideas and tune into ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Even just thinking about it makes me feel like really tired. I just want to go to sleep.
Yes, so exhausting.
So exhausting. So, Sammy, what does it mean to you to be in your power as a woman?
I love that question. What does it mean to be in my power as a woman? I think it means, one thing it means to me is to be unapologetic. So to be completely at peace and at home and comfortable with being in all of those juicy, delicious feminine energies that we've spoken about. And so even if just to, give you an example, like if we're out in the world and we're, in a bunch of corporate people or, something like that, and we share what we do, and it might feel, if we're not in our power, we might feel like we're less than, because our businesses, our work is based on the intuitive, the creative, the flow, the ease. But I think to be in deep respect and reverence and value of all of those beautiful feminine qualities means that in that situation, you feel just as worthy and just as in your power as someone that might be, say, more in the masculine. So, to be in my power. That's the first word that comes to mind for me, unapologetic. And I think a really important part of the equation too is to be in your power is to spend a whole lot of your time lifting other people into theirs. And this is something that I just feel so strongly. This is one of the reasons I just love women's circles and this kind of work and coaching and all of that so much, is because this is what we get to do. We're not in that space of comparing or tearing each other down. We're in that space of lifting each other up. And I mean, there's one of my very favorite quotes is, "We rise by lifting others." And every time I read that, and I think I've read it like 8,000 times in my life or something, every single time I'm still like, yes, that is it, because it's true. And yeah, so for me, a lot of being in your power is spending a lot of time lifting other people into theirs.
I love both of those points about being unapologetic and also feeling, and that's about actually feeling worthy, bringing it back to what you have power over. You can feel worthy if you make the choice to feel worthy, standing in your power as a woman. And yeah, the community and connection over competition, collaboration over competition. I always love those messages, but it's so true because we're all in this on earth together and we can't do it all alone. And I think that's one of the big things about understanding feminine energy, is really realizing that you can't do it all. You need to be able to receive support and help and ask for it and all of that. And these are qualities that many of us have forgotten, because independence is something that's really highly valued, I think, especially as women. And so, but when we realize, if we've got two people working together to get something done, there's more energy in that. You're going to be able to do more. And we all have these like wonderful skills and abilities and powers, and if we can help people stand in their powers, then we all benefit. It's not just the person, and even if it is, how amazing they're standing in their light, and that just inspires us then. So thank you so much. It's really touched me. Thank you.
Pleasure. And I feel like that is, again, one of the feminine energies, is to lift the collective, and for it to be like, we're in it for everyone. We're not just in it for ourselves. And that is, I don't want to get too deep into this, because again, I could talk about this for so long, but like that's where the patriarchy really shifted things. It was like, it's all about me. It's all about me. Yeah. But actually being really rooted in that feminine energy means it's all about us.
I love that. And one of, you spoke, you're a women's circle facilitator and you hold a lot of circles, and you're looking at doing this sacred circle for men and women, which I'm so excited to, see you do. So I've been to one of your circles. It was an incredibly powerful experience. I've been to some other circles. They've also been really powerful. I think there's just so much power in a woman's circle, or maybe it's just sitting in circle. Why do you think sisterhood and women's circles are so powerful?
So women's circles have been around forever, yeah? Like it's the way that we used to come together and celebrate things and discuss things, was literally in the shape of a circle, but also with ritual and beauty and connection. And so I think just actually feeling into what you said earlier about how often people say that when they've found the work that they're going to do, they feel like they're coming home, or that they've found their home. I hear a really similar thing at circles. It's like, I feel like I've come home, or I feel like this sense of remembering, this sense of remembrance, as though they've done it before.
Yes.
And I think it's a really powerful experience to be in a space which is completely non-judgmental, set up for connection and sharing and love, and to be completely accepted exactly as you are. And so, I mean, that's always one of my guiding missions is, you know, that feeling. But for someone to show up completely accepted and loved for wherever they're at, however they're feeling, it can be really transformative. So, you know, you're just as worthy to sit in circle if you've had like the roughest week ever and you're feeling awful, or if you are on top of the world and feeling incredible, or if you're going through a really dark time, or if you're there, you know, just to have a really joyful connection experience, whatever it might look like. You're equally as worthy to be there, and you're equally as loved. And I think that there's something really powerful in that. Yeah. I see.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I see women take to ritual and magic, because that's the word of our podcast, um, so easily. It feels like a really natural thing for a lot of women to play in that space, and that's always a real joy to see. It's always like I'm always super stoked and excited to watch, you know, first timers in a circle step into that space, and there's often, you know, a little bit of nerves around being in that space for the first time, because it can feel a little confronting, like, where am I? What is this? But, you know, circle is a very safe and gentle and loving space. So once those nerves settle, it's always a really powerful and beautiful experience, I think.
Yes. Oh, that makes so much sense when you talk about it being a coming home, and also about being a place where you're, you know, accepted for who you are as you are. You know, it's such a welcoming environment, and you know, it's the same with coaching. The space that we set up as coaches for a person is that they're, you know, fully seen and heard, and there is so much power in that. So in a group where you're all doing that for each other as well, you know, it's just magnified even more. It's, yeah, so beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing on sisterhood and women's circles, because I think they're just so awesome, and I loved going to your one. So yeah, if anyone has an opportunity to go to one of Sammy's, you should definitely check it out, because it really is a magical experience. And that is the word of this interview.
Thank you for saying that. I loved having you at that circle in New Zealand. Yeah, it was just the best. Loved it.
It really was so much magic. And so my final question for you, and, you know, this is just, you know, we can keep it really simple, just like what your top tips are for someone who is, you know, really looking to find more purpose in their life.
Yeah, so I think the question's actually really perfectly timed, because I think that really circles back to what we touched on at the beginning, and that is to follow the curiosity. And I think even that word curiosity takes the pressure off. Firstly, take the damn pressure off yourself to like have everything figured out, because that's not the human experience. You know, we're going to be exploring for a really long time. We're going to continue to explore and explore. But following what you're curious about and allowing yourself to kind of go down that wormhole. So if you feel the pull towards something, allowing yourself to actually explore that, rather than just going, oh, that's silly, or that's like a waste of time, or, you know, whatever might come up for you, or this is not legitimate. Actually allowing yourself to follow those curiosities, I think, would be my number one thing. And another point actually that comes to mind is to start to take notice of how you feel when you're in certain spaces or doing certain things. And the reason I say that is because I remember finding when I first started coaching, and for the very first time in my life, I would finish my work and I would feel more energized than when I began. And never in my life had I experienced that. I always felt like for sure significantly more drained after work than beforehand. And I think that can be a real measurement of when we're in our sweet spot. Does this energize you or does this drain you? And so asking that question as you are in that exploration phase of following your curiosities, notice how your heart feels. Notice how your body feels. Notice how energized or drained you might feel. I think, again, tapping into our body's wisdom can be a real guide for us and show us, what is meant for us, so we can get out of our heads and stop overanalyzing and overthinking and trying to intellectually figure the whole thing out, and instead start feeling what we're called towards and start feeling the pull, following those curiosities and noticing how we feel in each of these spaces.
Oh, they are such great tools. I did a slight yes when you said follow your curiosity.
I saw that.
Yes. Oh, because this is something like that is one of my number one pieces of advice for people as well. I agree totally, because when you don't feel connected to passion, curiosity is what leads you to passion. And that I was searching for passion for most of my life, had so many different interests and whatever, but it was only once I started, taking the pressure off, because curiosity is something everyone can tap into, that it really did change things, because it, simply giving yourself the permission to follow your curiosities for starters, and not being attached to what the outcome of that will be, is a whole other way of living. And yeah, just so that it gives you the opportunity for magic and for miracles to happen in your life. Really does. So thank you so much for mentioning that. And also, I think that really noticing how we respond in certain situations and coming back to that body intelligence, as you said, that's something that's really overlooked and so powerful. So thank you so much for all the wonderful pieces of wisdom and advice you've shared with us today. It's been such an excellent conversation. I really have loved this so much. So, Sammy, you're such an inspiration in all of these areas, the feminine, menstrual cycles, being a woman, sisterhood. And I'm so honored that you came on and have shared this space with me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, honey. Such a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate you having me.
So there it is, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this beautiful conversation with Sammy, all about the divine feminine, the power of being a cyclical woman, finding purpose, lifting each other up. So much heart-centered goodness here. And also the last episode for this season of the Create a Life That Is Beautiful podcast. I couldn't think of a better way to celebrate the finale of this series 1. I'm so honored that you've been sharing this journey with me in whatever way you have, whether this is your first episode or you've been with me since day 1. Thank you so much for coming along for this ride. It wouldn't be possible without you. This podcast has been made to support you. So let's see it as a beautiful collaboration. Do let me know how I can continue to support you going forward. I also did a live Instagram live this week and Facebook live with 7 tips for building a community of people who uplift you. You can still find that on my Facebook page. And one of my recommendations was to attend a women's circle. If you notice any locally, do go and give it a try. It's awesome. I'm also going to start running myself some local, so in London, women's circles. So you can watch out for those when I share them on my Instagram and in my newsletter. Sammy and I would love to hear your takeaways from this episode. So why not take a screenshot now of you listening and tag us on Instagram at Sammie Fleming, and that's with the J, and Create a Life That Is Beautiful to share the love. And if you know anyone who needs to hear this message, why not also share this episode with them? Tell them how much you love it and you think they'll love it too. That's what my friend did to me once upon a time, and it changed my life. I might not be where I am now if it weren't for an episode of a podcast, The Lively Show, being shared to me. I 100% agree with Sammy that there is so much power in the feminine energy and that we need to use both our masculine and our feminine. And if you want to explore these topics deeper, I invite you to join us in Embrace Your Feminine Essence. I'm offering 2 payment options. So you've got a payment plan and then an upfront plan, which was slightly cheaper. This will be the first time I offer this live. So if you want to be an original gangster, come and join us. I'm also offering the course at a discounted price that it won't be offered at again. So 8 modules, 4 live coaching calls, 8 guided meditations, a private Facebook community where we can all connect and get to know one another and share the experience together. So come join us. Trust the call, the curiosity. That's your intuition speaking to you. You can find the show notes for this episode over at leticiaringe.com/Sammie Fleming, as well as all the links to Sammy's details. And as I said, this is our last episode for the season. It's been such a magical journey with you all. Thank you for supporting the podcast, for sharing your reviews, sharing it with friends, and sharing your love. I absolutely adore showing up here each week, and I'm excited to come back for an even better season 2. This gives you an opportunity now to catch up on some of the episodes you might have missed, because I am creating space for all of the month of July for Embrace Your Feminine Essence and the beautiful women who join me there. So I'll be back on the 2nd of August with another episode of season 2. Until then, have a beautiful July and know that I love and appreciate you deeply. Come and connect with me over on Instagram or in my newsletter. Lots of love. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Create a Life That Is Beautiful podcast. If you feel called, I would love it if you could please take a minute to rate and review this podcast on iTunes. This helps other people like you find it. And I also invite you to take a moment to share this episode with a friend you know needs to hear it.